Rancho Verde High School, home of the Mustangs. Where 30% of our school's population is currently taking an AP class. Most AP students take at least 3 AP courses a year. Rancho Verde offers 22 out of the 36 AP courses offered by College Board. Time and time again, Rancho Verde continues to receive awards for their wonderful accolades. But at what expense, and can our students handle it? So I'm going to explore why AP. Hi, my name is Emily Vasquez. I'm currently the instructional coach and AP coordinator for my site. I'm a former AP calculus teacher and former student of this place I consider my second home. As a former student of the Val Verde Unified School District, I've experienced firsthand the shift in our advanced placement program, not only at Rancho Verde, but in the entire district. Let me begin by letting you know a little bit about what AP is. AP stands for Advanced Placement. It's a program run by the College Board. That's the same company that creates the SAT. AP courses are challenging college-level courses that you can take while you're still in high school. The AP exam is basically an end of AP course exam, and a high score earns you college credit. AP tests are scored on a 5-point scale, with a score of a 3 or above considered passing and a score of a 4 required for most colleges for credit. The AP program started in response to a problem in American education. In the 1950s and following World War II, America noticed an increasingly large gap between high school and college. Academic leaders were challenged to develop high school course descriptions and assessments that colleges would find rigorous enough to deserve college credit. As a result, the initial AP program started with advanced courses offered in 11 academic subjects. Over 60 years later, the AP program has expanded to close to 40 subjects, and over 2.4 million students take AP tests annually. Recently, all the trainings that I've been to in relation to AP classes has been all about equity and access. I've attended many conferences put on by College Board, and many are geared towards putting more students into AP. But my experience was much different. I never even remember a time when my counselor talked to me about AP classes. In fact, I don't even think I knew what they were. Now, almost 20 years later, I don't think you can attend a school in our district and not know what an AP class is, let alone graduate without taking at least one. Robin Ellison, a counselor at Rancho Verde, explains how students are placed into AP classes.
AP placement occurs several ways. The first of all, and the most important way, is the students can sign up themselves. A lot of times other AP teachers go in their classes, they recruit them by word of mouth. Students can go online and see what courses are offered and a description. So that's one way. Another way, their counselor or teachers can recommend them for the AP class.
As of my junior year, I've taken 9 AP classes. Next year, I'm planning to take 5 more, so that's going to add about 14 or 15 classes altogether throughout my 4 years of high school. And I'm also taking classes over the summer, so that adds about 3 more classes. So by the end of my senior year, I'm going to have about 18 classes that I've taken.
Adriana Vargas, instructional coach, shares her feelings about how students are put into AP courses.
In regards to AP students, I find that they're very much overworked, but it's voluntary. They choose to take on a number of AP classes. I have to admit, one thing that I disagree, that I don't necessarily like, is that I have heard that you should try to limit your AP classes to about 3, and we have many students who take 5 and 6 AP classes. And these students are obviously overzealous, overachievers. They're great, they're brilliant young people, but they do put a lot on their own plate. And as adults, I feel that it's a little irresponsible of us, particularly their counselors, to allow them to put so much on their plate, because these students who are taking 4 and 5 and 6 advanced placement classes, many of them starting since 0 period, in addition to that, are also in band, they're in sports, they're the vice president of whatever club they just started, and so they're constantly seeking all of the ranks and the badges to include for their college applications and job applications, which is admirable and it's beautiful, but you know, they come into class and you hear them talk, you know, with a smile on their face, ironically, but they're talking about how they only got 2 or 3 hours of sleep the night before, how they couldn't read the assignment that you left them because they're just so tired.
Over the past few years, the amount of students taking AP classes has drastically increased. As you can see here by this diagram, the blue is all of the exams that students are taking, and the red is the number of students enrolled in AP classes. Now keep in mind that our actual school population has decreased over the past few years. So to have an increase in these numbers while our student population is decreasing was rather interesting. I remember being in the classroom while this increase was occurring and having some students that would rise to the occasion and usually would have been overlooked in the past were now pushing themselves to do better in their AP courses. On the other hand, I saw students that couldn't cope with the pressure of the AP course. They started to resort to cheating, and some of them even decided that they didn't want to take the test at all. I remember feeling very frustrated and thinking to myself that he or she really wasted this year. I was putting myself under the pressure of AP like some of my students. My class became no longer a math class, but an AP class with one goal, and that was passing the exam. Now, after many years of experience in education, I look back and think to myself, I really lost my focus at this time in my career. But teachers, honestly, aren't the only ones that fall under the pressure.
Students that take AP classes, especially multiple AP classes, are often overwhelmed. I think sometimes they're perfectionists and they want to make sure that everything's done up to their standards, and they can stress, and then the time management becomes an issue. Sometimes they talk about, you know, the lack of sleep.
So I really wanted to explore this and see how our students are feeling, but also see if our teachers and staff know ways to cope with this, because I felt like when I was in the classroom, I knew that students were struggling, but I didn't feel like I had the tools to be able to assist them. And I feel like that's what our teachers in our schools need to be aware of, because I see this as something happening nationally and not just something in California. Emma is currently taking 4 EP classes and 5 next year. Here's what she has to say about the workload of her AP classes.
We're all stressed, but not everyone has a way of coping it, and it is like it's different for everyone because everyone.
Something that I'm very passionate about is if we're going to be putting a lot of AP students into these classes, we need to do our job and provide the support for those students. So we have 2 events that occur every month. One of them is AP Readiness, that's held at the local university, and there are sessions that are given there or provided by AP teachers from around the Inland Empire. We also offer an AP Academy, which basically is our district's version of AP Readiness. It's all of our AP teachers that are able to make it on that Saturday, and they host short study sessions for our AP students. Throughout the school week, we have after-school tutoring, study sessions, and practice AP exams that happen all throughout in the evenings. 88% of our AP students are involved in a lot of other things going on campus. It could be from clubs to sports, whatever those extra things may be. These resources may not be available for those students because they're involved doing those extracurricular activities. So how do we provide support for students that aren't able to make it, or maybe the ones that just don't reach out when they need help? Dale Cox, AP Physics teacher at Rancho Verde High School, says that this is a question he has pondered for years.
The feeling of, you have to be a little vulnerable to go to the teacher and say, hey, I don't get it. You have to be, and so I wonder how much the students avoid that uncomfortable feeling of having to admit that you're struggling or admit that you're making mistakes and look for answers. And
as a current AP coordinator and a former AP teacher, I felt like I had a lot that I could share. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit, especially a current event that occurred this past week with you. So the first being that there's one class in particular that I find that students really stress out about, and that's our capstone courses. Our capstone courses that AP provides is basically students are required to take a seminar course and a research course in addition to 4 AP classes, and this is all 4 years of high school. If they are able to complete and pass all of these exams, then they will earn an extra diploma. It's called a capstone diploma. So I tried interviewing this particular student, but she was way too emotional to be able to share her response. So basically this student had a project where she created this device that basically represented the current. And then she gathered different articles like plastics and aluminums and different types of debris, put them in mason jars and put them inside this research project that kept on rolling and rolling. And the rolling represented the current. It was a very, very intense research project that she's worked on all year long. And she spent a lot of time and wanted to know how basically these particular articles get broken down in the water system. So her deadline to go ahead and submit this information was last week. So I noticed I can go ahead and track all of the students and when they're submitting things, and I looked at hers and she actually hadn't submitted it yet, and this is the day of. So I call her classes and she actually didn't even come to school that day. So I'm thinking to myself, I reach out to the teacher. The teacher said she was kind of iffy about making sure that she finished the exam. I call home. I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody. So the next day, myself and the teacher both sought her out immediately, and she was just on the verge of tears. She did not submit her paper because she's very much a perfectionist and didn't feel like her experiment was 100% done. So she didn't want to turn in something that was not complete. And myself and the teacher both know that if she turned in her worst assignment, she probably would still pass. So then that led, like, I was able to call the college board and get an extension for her and everything, but that student had to have been stressing herself out the entire weekend and the day of to not even show up to school. That's how scared she was to be able to submit her project. And that's something that a lot of our students face. They may not all be taking courses for capstone, but the idea of them failing, this could be their first time, maybe not passing, or even a lot of these students who are so used to getting an A, if they get a B, it's like the end of the world to them. And that's really the whole purpose for me doing this video, is because although it's not a ton of kids, I still am able to find a handful of students that really struggle and put a lot of pressure on themselves and overthink things as AP students. And I really, really want to be able to support and help them as much as I can. So it sounds like I still have a lot of work to do after doing this video, but I appreciate the time that I was able to dedicate to getting more student interviews and surveys from the students to see how they cope with these things. And hopefully I can assist students in the future a little bit better as we become more aware of these issues and maybe developing some way or reason for them to cope with a workload of AP classes when this is something that I think our society is kind of moving in that direction.